Good morning, friends. It is a beautiful morning here at Ruby Red Farm in East Central Indiana. Today I have a whole list of things I need to get accomplished, starting with moving these chickens. If you haven't yet, please make sure to hit like and subscribe, and let's dive into the video. So the hens have been in this location for about 3 weeks now. I did move their coops forward about 20 feet a week ago, so hopefully that'll make it easier to move the coops. They've got fresh grass and fresh clover waiting for them on the other side, and we've had a lot more of them trying to escape during the day. So trying to move them forward, give them fresh grass so they don't have that grass is always greener on the other side mentality. I am moving them solo today, which is a lot more work, and I had to do it early in the morning because I've found that if you move them after about 12 or 1 o'clock in the afternoon, then every night they go back to where they used to sleep, saving us a ton of work hopefully at 10 o'clock tonight by moving them at 10 o'clock this morning just to get them to their new spot. So let's get them moved. I always feel like Fezzik when I'm driving through on my four-wheeler. So everybody move! Got to figure out how to get half the chickens that stayed behind to come over here. Chicky, 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 come on. Come on. That actually worked pretty well. I know the white bucket means treats. This is so much harder with just one person. I'm going to go ahead and get the other net, get them corralled, and then my kids are going to have to come out and help me herd them into the new netting. All right, netting's in place. I'm giving them a smaller amount of netting since the grass is taller and they'll have more bugs now that we're heading into June. So I'm gonna go grab the kids. We're gonna herd these chickens back to where they're supposed to be. quick tip, if you have these kinds of waters and they plug up all the time, you can pull a thick piece of grass and shove it down in there and it breaks that seal that happens. So in case you ever needed an easy way without having to go get some special tool, thick piece of grass works great. So I'm pretty happy with that move actually. We got all but about 15 or 20 chickens in, and quite frankly we've had that many out pretty much every day anyway. Hopefully tonight they'll either come up against the netting or they'll go to their old spot. We'll be able to collect them pretty easily once they kind of go and settle down for sleep. Figured I'd let you guys see the pretty peonies for a second instead of these ugly mate birds. All right, meat birds are all set. Got them some food, fresh grass, they got water. They're good to go. We're still having to use a heat lamp at night for these guys because it's dipping into the 40s every night. So about 45 or under, you run the risk of them suffocating from squeezing together too tight. We try to tarp them up and put a heat lamp on them if it's under 50. So it's definitely getting under 50 tonight. So we got to plug that heat lamp back in this evening. Nice and warm right now though.
Let me get some more milk.
Alrighty, this batch of lettuce here is definitely done. It has gone to seed. It's kind of going up too much now. We got about 6 or 7 good cuts off of this. I may cut just the very last of it, make sure it's not bitter, and take it to the restaurant. This batch over here is also probably done, even though it's younger, just because it's gotten so much warmer. So unfortunately, we're going to have about a 3 to 4 week gap where we don't have any lettuce available. But it is what it is. This was definitely a trial and error kind of a year for us with the lettuce. Really happy with how this stuff did. And like I said, we'll eat it, and if nothing else, chickens will eat it. So somebody's going to eat this. Let me cool it down though, get it nice and watered. It's nice and cool in here right now this morning. Unfortunately, I just noticed something bad about these cabbages. Something snuck in here and has eaten half of this cabbage and a pretty big chunk of this one over here as well. This one's got some bites out of it. So this has chicken written all over it, but it really could be just about anything. But that is incredibly disappointing. This could have been maybe a week or 2 away from being able to actually harvest these, and now 3 out of the 5 are completely ruined. So I am having just not the best luck with the garden this year. Darn it. Mama cat's so over it. Alright, out here in the garden, all that stuff I planted in my last video has still not sprouted. Hoping for better luck, but we've had cool nights all over again. Everything I transplanted is doing really well. The corn really just did not come up well. Hopefully it'll surprise me, and I'm going to weed it real well here and see what's actually corn. Got some squash plants, tomato transplants did well. And then all of that lettuce on the far side over there that I transplanted looks like it's doing great. So for the most part, things are doing fine, but still just very frustrating start to our spring. Let me go ahead and start tackling some of these weeds here. Every year we find a pretty significant amount of glass in this garden. It's one of the bigger chunks that I've ever found though. All it says EHI and bottle. Bottling. Probably bottling company. Ends in EHI, but that's a pretty cool one. You pulling weeds, guys? Pull weeds. Let's go. Alrighty, I'll go ahead and get this last bit done here. The game plan then is once this corn gets a little bit bigger, I will pull all the individual weeds that are in between the corn, but I will also put hay down just to block the weeds a little bit better. But for now, this works great. Takes me 4 or 5 minutes to just get this whole corn patch essentially done, and then we will move on to our next task here. So our broccoli, for whatever reason, just did not transplant well. It started making broccoli heads way too early, and they were very, very small. So I just let them be. They now, as you can see, have gone to flower. I'm gonna pull these out, then give them to the chickens. They love this kind of stuff. This area here did not get hay, and you can tell that major difference. It really just completely got overgrown with weeds. I will probably clear this area out with the stirrup hoe as best I can, but I gotta be careful around the onion. Gosh, these radishes are huge, but I gotta wait 1 more week before the market starts. So hilariously gonna have humongous radishes these first 2 weeks of market. I don't think my customers are mind too much. It's just very amusing. Just to give you an idea. These are humongous. I'm gonna give this one to the chickens. Let's see if they're getting used to their new spot yet. Chicky, chicky, chicky! I think they like their new spot. So these onions are doing really well. These are the ones that we planted from live plants, which was not what we meant to do. I just got a little quick happy when I was ordering things and accidentally ordered live plant. I think these are Walla Walla onions. So they've done really well. I'm actually very pleased with it. To me, these are pretty comparable to the onion sets that we normally buy, the kind of dried up bulbs. Those tend to really do well for us too. We've never had luck with onion seeds, but I really just think I kind of went about that all wrong. Going forward, we may try doing seeds again in the future, but super happy with these live plants actually. They've been kind of a different take on onions, but they're going really well. I'm gonna weed all of this, and then I am gonna put another thicker layer of hay down. This past week was, in theory, our last week where we had just so much stuff away from the house that we weren't able to be home hardly at all. That should all be behind us now. My kids do still have ball, 2 or 3 days a week, but driving up there and spending an hour or two for that's not a big deal. And we can kind of divide and conquer on the ball games and have one person here. At the very least, just getting the day-to-day stuff done, the dishes and the laundry and that. And then if all else fails, then we can wait till we're both home to do the farm work. The problem lately has been, if I've been home, I've been having to catch up on the inside stuff. Me and the kids, need laundry and food and all those things. So looking forward to getting back to some kind of normal here shortly once he's back. But just as things start to wind down in some aspects of our lives, the major time consumer for me for the next 5 months is the farmer's market. The farmer's market starts in a week, and so we have been gathering vendors and sorting through who's in and who's out, sorting through who wants to come every week and who wants to come some weeks. Once we get most of that sorted, for the most part, once the market starts, there's not as much of that we have to deal with, so that's always nice. But for right now, we are in the thick of those little fine-tuning details that really matter. So we're making those last-minute decisions, making sure all the money's in order for that. And now This weekend, my hope is to get my stuff ready. So we actually just went and kind of restocked our freezers for the market. We just picked up a whole beef on Friday, so I've got fresh beef, and then we went and took a whole batch of meat chicken about 2 weeks ago. And so we are all stocked up on chicken as well. I got whole birds made this go round, and then the next batch here I'll get made into cuts. We are really planning on selling a lot of meat this summer with our double snap that we're gonna have at the market. So looking forward to that, and just happy to have full freezers. It's always a nice feeling to be kind of prepared for the market itself. Now though, I gotta do the paperwork part of it. I gotta make sure all of my affairs, so to speak, are in order with my documentation. I have all of my licensing and all of that done, and I just need to get it in a prettier package so that I can easily show it to somebody if the health department happens to show up. Alrighty, this is looking more like a garden. I'm gonna keep working here and just get more done if I can. At the very least, I wanna weed these onions and the radishes really well. And then if I get to this part, great, and if not, it's not a big deal, but hoping to get as much done today as I can. It's my first day I've had at home in a while. It's not perfect, but I'm gonna call that done for right now. Happy to get any of this cleared out, but I'm not gonna plant. I'm probably just gonna wait and have Brandon actually hit this with the hand tiller one more time. He kind of tilled a new area here and the grass just took back over. So I'm actually gonna go ahead and stop there, spread some extra hay on areas that clearly need some extra, and water real thoroughly, and then we're heading in the house for something different today. All right, that's a good stopping point for right now. I'm gonna go inside, take a little breather, run a quick errand, and then we're making jam this afternoon. So I'm gonna go ahead and make some strawberry jam. This is something that sold really, really well at last year's market, but last year I only was able to make a couple of batches, and then by the time I went back, the strawberries were done. This year I have finally wisened up here. I made 2 batches of jam last week, and then this week I wanted to make 2 more batches, just hoping to make it at least through the whole month of June with strawberry jam to sell, because last week we sold out in 1 week, which was pretty crazy. We've kind of done the math on the jam, and all in all, we end up putting about $5 into each jar of jam, because we buy local strawberries, so these are from a little farm right up the road from us, because they just taste so much better. My son and I, all the extras from last week, we just sat here and ate them. We ended up, even if we had wanted to make a 3rd batch, we wouldn't have been able to, because we ate all the strawberries. Because we bought those local berries, of course, they're going to be a little bit more expensive than the store. Well worth it in my opinion. These are actually red all the way through and just taste fantastic. And I got to support another local farm, which is good. But because of that, the berries are relatively expensive, and then you add in the fact that 1 batch, which makes about 9 or 10 jars, takes 7 cups of sugar. So I've had to buy quite a few extra pounds of sugar, and then I use Sure Gel. This is nothing fancy. I can hang out and talk about why I like making jam so much, if nothing else. So the farmer's market that we go to is a very small market. We started it last year, and we usually only have about 10 or 15 vendors. Unfortunately, I think I'm going to be the only one this year that has jams or jellies or anything along those lines. And so I really like making jam and jelly. We don't usually make a whole lot, but every year I make strawberry and I make black raspberries. Because I could source those 2 things locally, I decided I would be okay with including it in the market. I'm not a jam specialist. Again, I literally just follow the instructions on the box. But a lot of people appreciate having that as an item for sale. I just really enjoy making it. It makes me think of my grandma, but it also just is a fun little skill that I'm glad I've kind of been able to develop the past few years. The black raspberry is my favorite for sure, but there's something to be said about strawberry jam. Kind of just hits the spot sometimes. Before I mash those, I need to get my water boiling, and I will say that if you live in the country, it's not a bad idea to put just a little bit of vinegar in here. I put about a tablespoon. What that does, if you live like we do out in the country with a well, It keeps it from having that white film along the top of it. We get that lime calcium kind of buildup. And so if you put just a little bit of vinegar, it keeps that from happening. You'll smell it a little, but it doesn't, get into the jam or anything. It's not going to ruin it. It just keeps your jars crystal clear. I'm going to get this started because it takes forever to get a pot going. All right, I'm going to mash up these strawberries. I do try to get it mashed up pretty thoroughly. I'm just using a potato masher. You can't always cut them or mash them more if you need to while they're cooking, so it's not exactly critical, except that you want to make sure they're going to be cooked all the way through when you're doing this. The fruit on our property is actually starting to really have a good year. We don't have any strawberries. I had a very small patch at one point, and they got mowed, and I just decided I'm done with trying to mess with them until we can really dedicate a full box to strawberries. I'm just going to buy them from this local farm because they do a wonderful job. But on our farm, the main fruits that we have started, because again, on a homestead, you have to realize stuff like this, fruit production takes years. It takes years to really get it going. And so we have a cherry tree that's a dwarf cherry, but it actually puts out quite a bit of cherries for how small of a tree it is. But it is 8 years old, and it's finally, looks like this year going to have maybe 400 or 500 cherries on it. It's loaded with cherries, but you got to imagine, just a few years ago, I was happy I got a small handful of cherries off of this tree. And so thankfully that tree looks like it's going to be producing. They're just starting to change right now. And so I should have cherries coming on ripe here in the next few days. And then we have apples as well. Our apple trees here on our farm really are doing fairly well. We decided just mutually to get away from that lease that we were doing out in a different town. We really enjoyed tending to that orchard. We just did not have enough time. And they approached us, and apparently a family member had moved back home that wanted to take it over, so we gladly relinquished our duties there. I was really sad to let that go because we did enjoy that. But just realistically, we couldn't afford the time that was needed to drive over there and tend to that constantly. So super fun, and I think it'll help us know how to better take care of our orchard as it develops, because we've got about 10 fruit trees out there. So ideally, here in the next few years, we'll be getting more and more of these apples. Some of those trees are about 5 years old. Most of them, though, are only a couple years old. So we've got a long time before we're going to be really producing that many apples. I do have a standard cherry tree that my mom gifted me last year that, again, will take many years, but that'll give us lots of cherries down the road. And then our black raspberry bushes, which I am a huge fan of black raspberries. We have red raspberries as well. I planted those about 3 years ago, and they're doing very well also. So I looked, and they are loaded with some berries that are still developing. And so here again, usually it's right before the 4th of July, so kind of late June. It's early June now, so within 2 to 3 weeks, we'll be having black raspberries as well. And I'll be making jam all over again. Raspberries just grow really well in Indiana. And again, the little patch that we put in is doing awesome. Would love to have more fruit as the years go on, keeping in mind, while we do this as a business and we work outside of the home, at its real core, we're trying truly to create an actual homestead that supports itself. So, right, we want to grow as much of our own food as possible, and not necessarily in a prepper kind of a mentality. There's a little air of that going on as far as, okay, if the world were to fall apart, would we be able to survive on our property? Kind of a doom and gloom way to look at it. We just really enjoy that freedom and that self-sustainability. So fruit is a big piece of the puzzle with that. And so we're trying to kind of get those foundations of having nice options of fruit that come ripe at different times of the year and can be preserved all these different ways. So eventually we'll add to the list and we'll get some other options. All right, let's mash this next batch up. And I do need to measure these. I believe it's 6 cups. I need to look at my recipe. But let me get these mashed and I'll put them all back in this bowl. The slowest step here is going to be getting that water boiling. So I'm going to probably have a little bit of a delay before that starts. Once the water's boiling and I know I can get my jars prepped and ready, then I will end up cooking the fruit. But you guys will see all that here in the next few minutes. Try not to make a mess. It's like my favorite shirt. I haven't worn this one in a while, but I love it. This is kind of what we're going for, just a nice mash there. All right, let me get this back out and measure it. It's probably about 2 cups, but you do want to be really exact because of the chemistry that goes into making jam. 3, about half. So I'm going to go ahead and get some more strawberries cut up and prepped here. I'll show you guys though how we do it once we start getting everything cooking. This is just starting to boil here. The nice thing is these are fresh, store-bought, brand new ball jars, and so that means I really don't have to wash them, but I do still have to sterilize them. So you got to make sure you get all the germs out of these jars, and the way we do that is by putting them in the boiling water for just a little bit. I like to go ahead and do this before I even start cooking the fruit, because in my experience, there's not enough time once you've started cooking the fruit to mess with this and get them back out again and make sure everything's okay. I'm gonna go grab my canning kit that's got the different tools I'll need to reach in here so that I'm not gonna lose my fingertips, just because everything is hot. The jars are hot, the fruit is hot, the lids are hot, the pan is hot. I try to be very careful, but not exactly known for being the most cautious human in the world. My daughter gets it honest. Let's go ahead and get these out. One other thing I will mention here is when it comes to the jars that you buy, I highly recommend getting the name brand, getting ball jars. Last week I was kind of in a pinch and ran to Dollar General and grabbed some off-brand jars. The jars themselves were fine. I have found that the off-brand jars do break more easily, so you gotta be really careful. But the problem was that the lids did not seal on those off-brand jars. So thankfully, I kind of have a stash of these lids of the actual important part. And so I was able to very quickly pivot and take the store-bought off-brand lids off and put ball quality lids on, and then I just reprocessed for about 5 or 6 minutes, and that was enough to get them to seal. So thankfully, I kind of lucked out on that, but that could have been really bad, quite frankly. All right, let's make sure we don't lose any more water out of here. And onto the fruit. The nice thing with fruit jam is that it is acidic enough. You don't have to add anything, like lemon juice, for example, but you also don't have to pressure cook it. This is your acidity, though, is in this pectin and the sure gel. So I'm going to add the sure gel. It'll get mixed in, and then we'll start cooking this fruit here. I'm going to put it on high. Once I mix this is when things kind of start to move quickly. And so I'm going to mix this all in, and I'm going to actually go ahead and measure out my 7 cups of sugar, because I need to have that ready for right when it starts boiling. You don't want to overcook it by accident. Yeah, it can be a little eye-opening when you see how much sugar goes in here. So again, we had 6 cups of fruit, and I'm going to go ahead and measure out 7 cups of sugar. They do want it to get to a rolling boil. So a rolling boil is just when it's boiling and I stir it and it doesn't stop boiling. So I'm going to leave it alone for now. Got my sugar ready. This is still going. I'm not losing too much water here. One last thing to mention is I will add just a tiny little bit of butter. We're talking like half a tablespoon. That much. I'm going to add just a little bit of butter. And I tried it both ways the other day, and it actually did make a really big difference. The butter is to keep the foam down, so it's to keep it from having so many bubbles. I was cracking up at the difference that it actually did make, so I'll probably do it that way every time if I can remember, which I remembered. I'm very proud of myself. We are there. We got quite the boil going now. Go ahead and add my sugar here. I do want to try to spread this out. I noticed last time I ended up with little pockets of it if I put it all in one pile. There we go. Also, pro tip that I have done in the past, don't try to double this recipe unless you have a humongous pot, which again, I could have used this, but I needed to can the jars. I thought last year I could be smart and double the batch, and I ended up boiling over very dramatically. There was, oh my gosh, there was strawberry jam everywhere. It got down beside the side of the stove. It was a mess. So I don't recommend trying to double this one. I feel like one batch at a time is definitely the way to go. All right, we are at that rolling boil. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the timer on for 1 minute and keep stirring this the whole time it's boiling here. Turn the temp down just a little bit just so it doesn't boil over on me. There's my minute, and turn that off. I'm going to transfer this off of the heat over to the other side here. I like to use the back of the spoon and kind of push them around to one side. There's not very many, but then once I've got them pushed around, Then I'll use the other side and scoop that out. The bubbles aren't a problem. They don't like ruin the jam. They just look kind of funny when you get them into the jar. And sometimes then it feels a little weird if you're dishing it out and it's just foam. So we don't want our customers to feel like they got gypped. All right, there we go. All right, I'm gonna bust out an actual ladle for this one. And then I do have a nice little funnel that I use. I am taking it to the fill line that's there. That leaves me about a 1/4 inch of head space at the top. Okay, here we go. I can always add a little bit more later if I need to. We're gonna go ahead and move to the next jar. I'll go through and get all 10 jars filled up the same way. Again, just keep in mind to be very, very careful. It is certainly possible and actually a relatively major risk of getting burned in this phase, because if you get this essentially boiling liquid jam on you, there is no way to get it off of you in time before you've been burned. So you got to be extra careful in this step. A lot of people wear an oven mitt or something similar. I probably should, to be honest. But I've done it enough now that I'm relatively confident that I will not burn myself. Probably a false confidence, if I'm being honest. All right, there's just a tiny bit left in there. We'll let it cool down and my son will probably eat it. But here are my jars. I ended up with 11 jars, which is awesome. I'm gonna get the lids on, but first I gotta make sure the rims are clean. I'm making sure that I didn't drip any of the jam on the lids, because I almost always have. You can see that little bit of red there. So sometimes that little bitty drip will be enough to not make it seal. We have enough jam. I do not need any more jam that has to take up space in my fridge. So we're going for 100% success rate here if possible. So again, highly recommend the Ball brand. Can't say enough for how reliable they are, which is really what you want when it comes to canning. Now we will do some pressure canning later on in the summer with green beans. That's really about the only thing. I've done corn before, but it was kind of a pain. So we'll probably just hit the green beans here later in the year. All right, I'm gonna get these on relatively straight, and then I need to get my bands on. So these bands just hold everything in place. This is one last reminder that this jar is gonna be really hot. So be either really quick or get yourself an oven mitt. I'm too stubborn. So I just do one quick little turn. This is just to ensure that everything seals like it should. Now, in theory, once you're done, you can take these back off the bands. But again, for us selling these, it kind of looks nice to have the band on there, and people like to be able to reclose it when they're using it in the fridge for the next month or two. Sometimes too, you'll see people put little bits of fabric that just looks nice. Everything's good. I want them to be essentially fingertip tight, not crazy over tightened, but nice and snug. I'm gonna grab my jar lower here, and we're gonna lower them into the water. All right, here we go. Again, we gotta make sure they're covered. So if they're not, then I'm gonna have to put more water in here. Usually by the time I add them all, we're good. They are nice and covered. I'm gonna put the lid back on so we don't lose any more water. And then I'll set a timer for 10 minutes. Alrighty, they are processed. I'm gonna go ahead and take this off and set them off to the side here. There's those nice clean jars thanks to adding that vinegar. So I'll take it. I do like to try to get that little blob of water off the top as I get them out here. Set these off to the side on a clean towel. We have got 11 jars of jam, and we'll see if we can hear those start popping here any second. All right, most of those have sealed already, which is pretty good. The rest will probably seal here in the next few minutes, but this jam really just looks delicious. Can't wait to get it labeled and ready for the market. As for me, I'm gonna head outside and do my evening chores. There we go. This batch is about 5 weeks old, and we're getting our next batch in, I think, on Thursday. So keeping the process going here. If you're just getting into the chicken world, this is definitely the best type of water to get. The round ones are too hard to close and open. And the ones that you just take the whole top off tend to clog really easily. This style is just awesome. They're still a little tricky because you got to take them out and put the cap on. Well worth that extra step because they last a lot longer and they actually flow water reliably. All right, meat birds are all set except for plugging their light back in this evening, and I'll mess with that once it's dark out. All right, it started with these guys, it's gonna end with these guys. Let's go ahead and gather the eggs for the day. We have just a handful of these new hens laying. I can tell because the eggs are a little smaller and they're nice and uniform in color. So excited for that. Couldn't have come at a better time. I got a lot of broody hens right now. Just that time of year. Really hoping to clean the coops out here, hopefully this weekend, but definitely within the next week or two, and get brand new bedding in here. Just didn't happen today, not enough hours today. I'm happy with what we got done today though. Alrighty. Done. Definitely a low egg day. They tend to lay a lot less on the days that we move them. And then after that, they lay more the days following. So not worried by this. Gonna get these washed and packaged and out on the porch. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up the video here, guys. If you made it this far, thanks so much for watching. We really appreciate it. This is kind of becoming a typical Saturday for us, at least in the summer. This is what it tends to look like. Hoping to get more garden work snuck in tomorrow. Got to get this video edited. And really just hoping to get stocked up and ready to go for the week. Maybe even do some meal prep tomorrow like normal. Well, the countdown is on till that farmer's market next weekend, and I have got a ton of desk work to do that doesn't really make very good video content. For right now though, I am done. I'm gonna head in, call it a night. Thank you guys again so much for watching. Make sure to hit like and subscribe. This was Courtney from Ruby Red Farm, and I hope you all have a great day.